Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So for today's topic, I wanted to talk about a console that honestly I haven't really done too much talking about here on my channel since it came out, and that's the Wii U. And I'm sure a lot of you have questions about the Wii U when it comes to, what's the deal with this thing? Nintendo just keeps porting all of the worthwhile games on here to the Switch, and what's the meat that's left on the bone? Should you be collecting Wii U games right now? Should you be selling your collection now if you plan on kind of like offloading some of your stuff? Are there certain titles that might still get ported and the price is going to just drop drastically? Or are there games that over time I feel will just become harder and harder to get for a good price? So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to take a deep dive into the sort of landscape of the general market for the Wii U. We're going to take a look through a huge majority of all of the Wii U games that are exclusive or semi-exclusive, and I'll explain that once we get into it. And I'll give you my opinion on each game, which games I think you should be keeping your eye on, which games are maybe going to drop in price, and we'll just have fun talking about the Wii U. Now, before we get into the whole game-by-game breakdown, let's talk about one thing with the Wii U. Unlike other consoles, especially Nintendo stuff, the Wii U, if you decide that you want to collect for this thing, you really don't have that broad of a landscape of games to choose from. So because of this, I actually feel like a lot of the Wii U games that we're going to talk about here are likely to maintain the price that they currently go for or increase quite a bit over the years. What do I mean by this? If you're collecting for something like the N64 or the GameCube, or heck, even the Wii, for example, there's a lot more worthwhile games on those consoles, so your resources, your funds are spread more thin, right? It makes sense. The GameCube, there's probably like 30, 40 really solid games you're going to want to pick up for the GameCube. The Wii U, while there are only about 30 sort of exclusive games that are left on this thing, the amount of worthwhile ones is a lot smaller. So because of this, I feel like the actually rare and expensive games are going to stay that way because it makes sense that people that would normally have to buy, say you're going for, I don't know, three $50 games on another console on the Wii U, the thought of having to buy a $150 game is probably not quite as bad because, well, there's not too many $50 plus games on the Wii U that you're going to have to worry about. So I hope that makes sense, and knowing that going into my price breakdowns here will be very helpful. Alright, so let's get into the meat and potatoes here, I guess. Starting with Zelda Twilight Princess. So I think this is probably the one, I've ordered these just loosely based on games that I've front-loaded this video with the games that I feel like most people would be interested in knowing about. And as we go through the games later on will be less and less, important, I guess, in many people's eyes. But let's start with the two Zelda games. So we're going to start with Twilight Princess here because comparatively to Wind Waker here, you can see that Twilight Princess obviously commands a bit of a higher price. So I think without a doubt, Nintendo is absolutely going to port Twilight Princess and Wind Waker to the Switch, if not maybe whatever their next console ends up being, but I do think it is way more likely to see a port to the Switch unless they're working on a complete graphical overhaul for something like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess. So if you're the type of person where you don't think you're going to be revisiting Twilight Princess, and you're looking to sort of offload some games in your collection, if you see here, this game has been on a steady increase for quite a while. And something of note, every game that we look at here in this sort of like March to April timeframe, this is when the Wii U shop was closing down. So you will see huge price spikes here for most games. Most notably, though, you don't see a huge price increase for Twilight Princess, which is really interesting because there are some other games that saw absolutely bombastic price increases around this time. So this is something to keep note of here. So because of the fact that this game is over $100, there's no way it will maintain this price when the eventual port does come, and I fully believe it will come. So if you're looking to get rid of some of your Wii U games, this is definitely one that you want to get rid of. And I'd also say this is probably one that you generally don't want to buy, because why wouldn't you want the better, probably better Switch port, or inevitable, if it doesn't come out on the Switch, this will definitely get re-released in some form or fashion on Nintendo's next console. And the same can be said about Wind Waker. Wind Waker, of course, though, is about half the price. And as you can see here, you can see this huge price increase here at the end of last year. And it doesn't really seem to be heading anywhere higher or too much lower. So $50 for Wind Waker, another game that once again I think is going to absolutely get ported. And my same sentiments for Twilight Princess extend to Wind Waker. Now, here's a great example. I put Hello Kitty Cruisers front-ended in the beginning of this video, and just to show you here, I actually still have my sealed copy that I got in the Toys R Us in New York Times Square. It is still sealed, and it still has the Toys R Us 1999 price sticker there. I will never open this because this has a lot of sentimental value. It is the last game that I, bought from a Toys R Us, let alone the one in Times Square, which is now also closed down. But I want to show you what happens when people have a rare and expensive Wii U game, and this game was known for being quite expensive and quite rare for quite a while, and then it got a reprint. And look what happened to the price. It went from being a peak price of nearly $150 down to $30 to $40, $50 at the most. So this is the scary thing about having, if you were a Wii U collector, it was like, who's next? Who's the next victim? Which of my expensive rare Wii U games is going to get ported, and then the price is just going to absolutely get demolished? And if a game like Hello Kitty can get ported, then anything can get ported, right? So there was definitely a bit of hesitation when it came to collecting hardcore for the Wii U. It's one of the reasons that I kind of kept out of collecting too actively for the Wii U, because I was just like, I'm just going to wait for the Switch port. So I just wanted to throw that in there as an example. And then here is something that, as you can see here, suddenly in September 2021, for some reason, the game saw a huge price increase for Unwritten Tales 2, the Book of Unwritten Tales 2. Now, this is a game that is available on PC, but the only console port that exists is on the Wii U. Will this ever get ported? Unfortunately, I don't know the history behind like the developers or the publishers or whatever have you going on with this game, so I can't tell you who has the rights to this right now. But this is an example of just some random game that was ported to the Wii U that still, even after the massive price increase that we see here around the time of over $300 for this game after the announcement and closure of the Wii U eShop, it is still maintaining a very hefty $250-ish range. Now, what is going to happen to a game like this? Is the price going to continue to go up? Is it going to continue to go down? So this is actually genuinely a quite a rare game, and the only people that are really buying this are people that are going for games on the Wii U that are specifically for that console and very unlikely to ever be ported elsewhere. And I would say that this game would probably fall within that sort of realm, that area of a release on the console. So when you have a game that has a really low print run, and you have a handful of collectors out there that are clamoring to get their hands on it to complete whatever small subset of a Wii U exclusive or full library collection that they're going for, I do see this game maintaining its price into the inevitable future. But there's one interesting thing that we need to think about when it comes to this. The amount of people out there that are going to go for a full Wii U collection is certainly going to be lower than people that are going for a collection of N64, GameCube, even NES to that extent, or Virtual Boy. There's probably not a lot of people out there that are Nintendo fans that are hardcore enough into the console to be spending $200-$300 on a game like this. So what happens when all of those collectors achieve their small collection? Because the Wii U collection is pretty small when it comes to exclusives. Heck, even the collection in general, when you don't include exclusives, is still relatively small. So what happens when everybody gets their copy of Book of Unwritten Tales 2? Does the price come down, or does it hold? And in my opinion, I think it will continue to slightly come down over the years. For this game in particular, there is another game on this list that I do not think will be going down, which has a similar rarity. But a game like this, where I feel like it's kind of just appealing to purely collectors and not people that are probably looking to play the game, in my opinion, I think you're going to see a steady decrease on this one. So if you have a copy of this, I would urge you to sell it sooner rather than later. And getting into that game, which I do think will continue to hold, if not see a price increase, I see this as being the absolute holy grail of Wii U collecting, and that is Devil's Third. As you can see here in the Wii U shop closure, this game was going for a peak price of over $500. Now, that has seen a price decrease back down into the $300 realm, which it was kind of sitting around in the late to mid 2021 time period. However, the thing that we got to keep in mind with Devil's Third is this game is highly unlikely to ever be ported or re-released in any fashion, because this game was a critical commercial failure. Nintendo published this themselves, and we all know Nintendo gets very embarrassed over commercial failures when it comes to games that they've released. They want people to forget that Devil's Third exists, let alone, like, they also pretty much want people to forget that the Wii U in general exists. So what are the chances that they actually port one of their most poorly reviewed games on the Wii U? Slim to none. Now, the thing about Devil's Third that sets it apart from something like Book of Unwritten Tales 2 is that this game kind of appeals to that niche audience that is into those, mid 2000s, 2010s silly action games, right? So if you're into those games on Xbox 360 and PS3 where you're just running around with a sword hacking and slashing and not really having too much of a care in the world, maybe you get a simple skill tree and, a game that takes 5 to 10 hours to complete, that's a lot of people's bread and butter. A lot of people love those kind of games. It is a bygone sort of era. I mean, heck, you got games coming out like Wanted Dead on current generation systems that is trying to recapture that feeling because developers are starting to realize that there is a small niche audience for these types of games. And that is exactly what Devil's Third is. It's also one of the few completely exclusive games on the Wii U that isn't tied to some pre-existing series, like a first-party Nintendo release like a Mario or a Zelda or, etc., even Kirby. So I do really feel like if you were to be holding on to a game for your Wii U collection in terms of if, selling games isn't your priority, if you're ever, in need of money or whatever, I would say Devil's Third is a safe one to definitely hold. I wouldn't sell it right now. I do feel like in the next 5 years, you can see this game easily climb back up to the $500+ range because this will appeal to people that are collecting beyond just a full Wii U collection. It's going to appeal to those people that, for example, the kind of people that are buying stuff for like the Sega Saturn. I know this is a weird comparison, but in the Sega Saturn side of things, or even the Neo Geo side of things, like there are a lot of collectors out there where they will plop down $500 for a game just because, it's exclusive, it's kind of cool. And a lot of times these days, I feel like collectors there's like a hip feeling, a sort of like, I don't know how to describe this, but a lot of people are kind of into these games that really bombed when they first came out, but now have sort of gained this cult recognition. And I really feel like people are way more likely to pay a lot of money for bad games than they are for good games, if that makes sense, depending on the rarity of it. The more rare and the more bad it is, the more chances that there's more collectors out there looking for it. I know that's a really weird, it probably deserves a whole video in and of itself, but that's Devil's Third. All right, Game & Wario. Now, this is one that I also see increasing in price drastically. Now, as you can see here, this game saw a nearly 100% price increase at the announcement of the Wii U shop closure, and since then it has seen a nearly 100% price decrease. Now, a lot of that could be because of, Nintendo is releasing new Wario games still on the Switch, and they're probably not going to stop that anytime soon. They seem to release a game for the series every once in a while, but this one here seems like one that is forever eternally going to be stuck on the Wii U unless somehow when they come out with their next console, they're like, hey, let's port this because whatever we're doing their next console, it's going to work with the adaptability. And this was essentially like a showpiece for the gamepad controller. And I don't think Nintendo is really going to focus on re-releasing too many Wii U games where the main purpose of the game was to show you why you needed to own a Wii U. I don't see too many of those sort of demo-y, sort of showpiece style games getting any kind of port or re-release. So I think Game & Wario is one that you are just going to have to get on the Wii U. And because of that, and because it has a very loyal fan base, I don't see this game going too crazy because the print run on this was definitely higher than games such as Devil's Third, but I can easily see this kind of fluctuating between the $150 to $200 mark in the coming years. Paper Mario Color Splash is another one where I think if they were going to re-release this, they would have done it already before Origami King released. Now that released, I really feel like Nintendo's chance of coming back and revisiting a game like this just seems very unlikely. Now this is probably my number one wanted Wii U game. I have been wanting to kind of get back into a lot of these Paper Mario games that I missed out on, and this one intrigues me the most, probably because it maintains, it was one of the last Paper Mario games that still kind of looked and felt like an RPG before we got to Origami King, which to me looked way more like a puzzle game. So I think a lot of Paper Mario fans are going to gravitate towards this just because it's one of the last in that sort of like, hey, Paper Mario is an actual turn-based RPG in a way. Even though this one had a lot of fans kind of on the fence when it first came out due to the sort of way that it handled combat with like the colors and stuff that you had to collect. I haven't played this one yet, so I can only speak so much on it in broad general terms, but I understand the gist of it. And because of the way that this game functions with the gamepad, Nintendo would have to go the extra mile to try and port this to something else, so I think this one is eternally going to stay on the Wii U. And being a Paper Mario game, I can easily see this climbing over the years. I'd say in a 5-year time span, you can easily see this reaching 100 plus, just because of the series that it's tied to. Alright, now I threw this one in here even though it doesn't have a official US physical release. It only got a digital release, and that is Project Zero Maiden of Blackwater. Now, you might be like, well, this just had an HD port to the current gen consoles, and you would be right. However, a lot of people really stand by the Wii U version of this because of the way that the gamepad really elevated this game to levels that the current ports just don't really do a good job of, sort of capturing, rather, almost like a pun on the camera, from the original game. So the way that this worked on the Wii U is you held the gamepad and you would actually like look around your game room as you played, and it really felt like you were holding a camera while you played this. Now, ultimately, I decided that this is something that I'd be okay with playing without the gamepad, so I'm okay with playing one of the HD versions, but a lot of people won't be. A lot of people say that this is the definitive version, so if you're importing games or if you're able to play these PAL releases, I do think that this will absolutely maintain its value over the purists. Horror game collectors tend to like physical versions of their games, and especially this series has had a lot of physical releases, even in the West. So I do feel like this one is going to easily maintain the $100 price that it is going for, and I can see this rising back up to this $200 point that it was reaching in February 2022 here in due time, if not more, since it is a horror game, and we all know how horror games are. Alright, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Now, this one here is one that I can confidently say, as you can see, it reached about $40 during the shop closure period, and it has kind of come back down to around where it used to be prior. I can confidently say that this is a Sonic game that you will never ever see ported anywhere else outside of the Wii U. Why? They have moved on from Sonic Boom. They're not going to work their way backwards from what they're doing with Sonic right now and be like, hey, remember Sonic Boom? You remember that Sonic game that reviewed very poorly on the Wii U? Well, guess what? It's back. They're not going to do it. So this is going to be a 100%, and I strongly believe this. You're never going to see this game even ported to the PC. Sega wants you to forget this game exists. Nintendo wants you to forget this game exists. It's not coming back. So what is going to happen with an exclusive Sonic game? So I think this game is actually okay if you can get past the first few hours. I think a lot of Sonic fans wrote it off quickly, and I don't blame them for it because the beginning of this game is pretty bad. Once you get past that initial hump in the beginning of the game, the first 3 hours, I would say, it actually becomes a decently playable 3D platformer. It's not quite as bogged down by terrible dialogue and side-scrolling platforming sections that have no business in being in 3D Sonic games, in my opinion. If you're making a 3D Sonic game, keep it 3D, keep that side-scrolling stuff out of there. Mini rant over that. I just can't stand it when modern Sonic games do that these days. So I don't see this one booming in price. Pun may be intended there. But I can definitely see Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric going between the sort of $60 to $70 range. Just because of its poor critical reception, this one's only going to really appeal to hardcore Sonic Wii U collectors. So the audience will be limited. Alright, next up is a Wii U exclusive that, man, I've been really hoping that this game would get ported to the Switch, and out of all the Wii U exclusives that are left, I do feel like Tank 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 is one that still has a chance of some kind of a Switch port. I really thought they might have done it for the Switch. I don't think they're going to do it for the next iteration of the Switch. The game just visually is probably not dazzling enough to warrant their next generation of console. But Tank 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 is a great little game that I think was marred by the fact that it didn't have online multiplayer. It's a port of an arcade game, and I played the arcade game version, and it did a really good job of capturing the arcade game feel from the original. And it's a lot of fun. And because of that, sort of being a Wii U exclusive that's actually good and probably doesn't stand much of a chance these days of getting ported anymore. I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened already. I think Tank 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 is going to definitely maintain its price. As we can see here, it got as high as $50. I can see this over time sort of maintaining that $60 to $70 price range. Will this ever break $100? No. I think the print run is a little too high on this game, being a Wii U launch game. But I think this is going to become one of the most sought after Wii U games in terms of people that decide to get into collecting for the console. Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, this is a really interesting one because this is also one where people do feel like it skates the line of games that can have potential to be ported. So it's sort of one of those things where, do you get it now while it's nice and cheap and do your playthrough on the Wii U version, or do you wait for that potential Switch or even, the next Nintendo console port of this? And if you really think about it, this game visually for its time was ahead of itself. I attempted to play this again earlier this year, and I was blown away by the graphics in this game, and I truly believe that maybe instead of developing the next Xenoblade game, like in terms of like Xenoblade Chronicles 4, maybe to tide us over for the next Switch console release, the Switch 2, we see a completely done from the ground up remake of Xenoblade Chronicles X, bring back that online multiplayer and online aspects in a brand new engine, and just show off the power of Nintendo's next console. I could see it happening. So I think this one's in a really weird spot. I think if if we go the entire Switch generation in the first few years of the next Switch without any news of this coming out, then I do think you will see the price of this increase back up into the $80, $100 plus range, because the Xenoblade series is beloved. This one has some hardcore fans, and I can definitely see why. But I think it's just one of those games where a lot of people are waiting for that re-release, and I think because of that, it's what's keeping this game at the $40 price range. I mean, think about it. It's an RPG exclusive to the Wii U in the beloved Xenoblade series, and it's only $40 right now. I think a lot of people are holding out. Alright, we got Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. Now, this is another one that I truly believe will be doomed to the Wii U for eternity, just because Nintendo seems to release a lot of Kirby games. So, when they come out with something like Kirby and the Forbidden Land, and that's kind of a big success for them and a new direction for Kirby, are they really likely to go back to one of the more poorly, I don't want to say poorly, but less critically acclaimed Kirby games from the point in their history with the Wii U that they want most people to forget about? I don't think so, especially because they'd have to jump through a lot of hoops to port this game. You got to remember, well, you might be like, well, this game can work on, just make it a portable only game, so that you just have to play it in handheld mode. But from what I understand, the Switch's touchscreen for a game like this is nowhere near as accurate, pinpoint accuracy that you would need to play this game on a Switch handheld as compared to the Wii U gamepad. So because of that, I think they'd have to do a little too much finessing in terms of the controls, and releasing a Switch game that you can't play on your TV, I feel like they'd have a hard time marketing that to people that, I guess they feel like it would hold back sales, because not everybody plays their Switch games in handheld only mode. I think they're more likely to just iterate a new game in this series going forward rather than having to come back and retread old ground. So here's one that this is a really interesting one in terms of Animal Crossing is a beloved series. It's a Wii U exclusive, but this one here has just so many loopholes you got to jump through. If you plan on getting into this game, you got to collect cards, you got to have the amiibos. I have no interest in any of that stuff myself, so this game was definitely not for me. And it's a big bargain bin game. Now, look at this. This game was like $5 or $6 for the longest time. There was a bit of a price spike here with the closure of the eShop, understandably. And it's kind of actually maintained that price ever since. Will it ever come back down? I don't think so. I don't think you'll ever see this back in the $6 range. But I think it'll steadily keep above $10 or $15-ish for the foreseeable future. Are you ever going to see a price spike? No, this game was really overprinted. It was in bargain bins everywhere and on sales everywhere. And the amount of people that are going to want to get into this, considering all the accessories that you need just to play it, I think it's going to stay right around where it is. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the Sochi 2014 edition. Now, this is exclusive to Wii U, and as you can see here, interestingly enough, this saw absolutely no price increase, really. Maybe only by a few dollars for the Wii U shop closure, which is unusual. Most Wii U games definitely saw some kind of a price increase. So what does this tell me about this game? I think this tells me that nobody cares about Mario and Sonic at the Winter Olympic Games. Now, yes, this is exclusive. It's got two beloved characters, but I really do think that a lot of people mostly care. I think this is actually very telling. The people that care about Mario and Sonic Olympic Games are the casual gamers. Who doesn't care or follow the fact that the Wii U eShop is closing? Casual gamers. The hardcore collectors and stuff, they probably, or just Wii U gamers in general, they probably have the game already or just don't care either. So because of that, you're seeing no price change pretty much at all since this game has come out. I mean, look at this. This is actually kind of crazy. This is highly unusual for a game to maintain the same price for practically a decade. Will this go up? Being a Wii U exclusive, I can definitely see this hitting $30 or $40 potentially, but I think it's going to kind of stay on this current price trend for quite a while. Mario Party 10 is another similar game, kind of skating that that never-changing price point. Do I ever see this one going up? Well, this is a little tough because Mario Party games are always releasing. Nintendo's always putting them out, right? So the fact that there's also so many of them it gives people so many options. So when people think about going back and playing or picking up an older Mario Party, is Mario Party 10 really the first one that comes to mind? Probably not. And then, of course, this one has a lot of compatibility with the Amiibo stuff, another thing that might hold some people back. I'm sure this game was overprinted to all heck, so I definitely don't see this one ever really breaking anything higher than $30 at the most. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. Wow, it's really interesting to see all these Mario-themed games maintain a super steady price. So this one's kind of interesting. I don't personally follow the Mario Tennis games super closely, but I did go back and check some of the past Mario Tennis games, like on the GameCube. That has seen a huge price increase, for example. Will this one ever see a price increase, however? Something tells me that this game has a ton of copies in existence, and I'm sure if I checked eBay right now, it would be littered with cheap and maybe even sealed copies, considering sealed prices are only $23, which is a little bit more than used. So because of that, I think this will take probably at least a decade, another 10 years plus, before you start seeing supply of this dry up and potentially renewed interest in it. Also, if Nintendo just decides that they're done with the Mario Tennis series, then I also think you might see an increase in people revisiting older titles in the series. NES Remix Pack. Is this something that Nintendo would ever re-release? I don't think in this form. I wouldn't put it past Nintendo, however, to release this as some sort of like mobile game where you pay individually for sort of like blocks of games. Like, hey, pay $8 and get all of the Mario games that were included in NES Remix Pack, or $8 for all the Kirby, or $8 for, or maybe they just sell content packs with a mix of each. I don't think you're really going to see Nintendo release a full-fledged package like this that isn't monetized in some way. Maybe they release a free-to-play version that you download and then you pay for, stuff, not even like on the phone, but like on the Switch or whatever else they come out with. Is that likely to happen? Probably not. I feel like this was definitely just a product of its time. They were trying something new. It was popular enough for them to port it to the 3DS, but I think if this was really a big enough success for Nintendo, we would have seen more of this already. I think they would have already been a new one on the Switch, so I think the sales for this were probably below what they were expecting. And we all had Nintendo treats games that they don't like the sales of. They kind of just abandon it. Nintendo Land is a game that has been as low as $5. Obviously, this is the poster child of the Wii U. This was the game that most, you were pretty much, if you got a Wii U, you had this game, unless you were getting, I think this was like bundled with the console, right? If I remember right. I'm honestly forgetting. I know, I'm pretty sure mine came with this when I bought it, because I don't really remember buying this separately. This is a game that I think will forever kind of maintain this $10 price. There's so many copies of this out there. It's a game that never will be ported, but really, I think this was a game that was really fun when you first got your Wii U, and then people stopped caring about it, and I don't think people are going to start caring about it for a very long time in terms of like a meaningful way that would increase the value of it. So if you're thinking about buying this, you don't got to be in any rush. There'll be plenty. So Rabbids Land is another exclusive that I have not played, but as you can see, it has kind of maintained a sub $15-ish price for a very long time now. I think if the Rabbids series wasn't as saturated as it is now, what do I mean by that? If Rayman Raving Rabbids on the Wii was probably like the only game in the series, and then they released this on the Wii U, then I can actually see this being like a $40-50+ game. But because people are kind of just honestly getting tired of the Rabbids, there's so many games in the series, I just think that this doesn't appeal to as many people anymore, and it's definitely like a kid's game. It's not really something that collectors are super seeking out, so I think it will kind of, for the foreseeable future, see no price trend upwards. Splatoon is another one where, despite the series being completely beloved, this was printed into the ground. There are so many copies of this game out there. There's not a lot of reason for people to revisit the older Splatoon because Splatoon is definitely played competitively online, and because of that, people are going to want to stick with the latest in the series, and they don't really have much of a reason to come back to the old one. And considering how many copies of this games are out there, I think this is going to stay at about the $10 price point for a very long time. Star Fox is one that I could eventually see going up in price because Nintendo has been completely ignoring the Star Fox series. I guess it just isn't selling well enough for them. They have other priorities. Now, this game did have a very big print run because you always saw copies of this. There's tons of them. As you can see, it's selling 3 times per week, which is kind of a lot for a Wii U game at this point. So there's a lot out there. Maybe if you're going for the version that's bundled with Star Fox Guard, nice, with the box that it comes with. As you can see, this is also super cheap. I just put that on there just to kind of show because they kind of go hand in hand. I could definitely see this kind of getting back into the 30, or not getting back to, but being in the $30 to $40 range if Nintendo just continues to ignore the Star Fox series. So now we're getting into the games that are not exactly Wii U exclusives, but there are really reasons that you might want it on the Wii U, and one of them is Zombieu. This is a game that was originally on the Wii U and then ported to other consoles. I've played both versions, and I have to say that the Wii U version definitely does the Wii U gamepad justice. Now, look at this. This is a $5 game. Now, I don't see this ever getting a port because it's already been ported, and it probably didn't have that great of sales to begin with. So I'm just kind of putting this one out there as an example of the kind of people that might collect for Wii U in terms of they want the Wii U games that utilize the gamepad in unique ways outside of the exclusives, and a lot of those kind of games are nice and cheap, and there's quite a few of them that I'm not listing in this video, but it just shows you that not all Wii U games have to be in this $30+ range. You can also get some ones that are worth owning a Wii U for at an affordable price. Zombieu has no chance of ever seeing a price increase. It's way too highly printed. Now, Smash Brothers does have a 3DS version. This is, of course, the Wii U console version. Do I ever see this going up in price? I really don't, because this was printed to high heavens. I mean, there are so many copies of this out there, and demand, I think, for this is probably the lowest in the series. I think a lot of people would agree that this was one of the low points of the Smash Brothers series. I know it was my least favorite out of what I've played. So I don't think a lot of people are kind of revisiting this to play. And of course, a lot of people play Smash Brothers for the online mode these days. So, and local multiplayer, if you're going to play local Smash, just play whatever the latest one is, right? So I think a lot of people for that reason are going to kind of just ignore. Or another reason too is most people just already have the game, right? Like, if you're a Smash fan, you kind of already have the game. There's not a lot of people that are out there looking for a copy of Smash Brothers because everybody already has the game. Yoshi's Woolly World is also a game that had a 3DS version. Do I see them porting this to the Switch? If they're coming out with stuff like Crafted World, do they really want to be going back in time? I think that they're just going to keep reiterating on this series going forward with Yoshi. The chance of this getting a port, I would say, are slightly higher than most games on this list. But as you can see, this is another one of those first-party Nintendo games that has just absolutely maintained a $20 price point. Now, it being a sort of Wii U exclusive, if you include the 3DS version, with a beloved character and a cutesy Nintendo platformer, I could definitely see this going up a little bit in time, into like the $30, $35 range, but I don't think you're ever going to see this approaching 50 plus, just because it's probably got a really decently high print run for the Wii U, and I think Nintendo's going to keep releasing Yoshi games, so I don't think there's going to be too much of a reason for people to get nostalgic and come back to this one. All right, and lastly, before we get into the last game here, I just do want to say, for those of you that have made it this far in the video, thank you. This is a long video. If you enjoy these deep dives and you've made it this far into the video, and if you're not subscribed yet, definitely give this channel a subscription, because I cover a lot of this kind of stuff on the channel, these sort of deep dive, collecting, marketing side of videos. So if you found this useful, be sure to subscribe. If you're already a subscriber, thank you for watching, and be sure to leave a like. It helps more people discover my content. So Sonic Lost World also had a 3DS version. The 3DS version does differ quite significantly from the console version, despite it appearing to nearly be the same game, but it is quite different. As you can see, it did have a fairly big price increase here. It had like a $10-ish price increase. Interestingly, though, you saw it get a price increase with the Wii U shop closure, come down, and then get another spike in price here in March 2023, and then dip that back down. I'm not sure what happened here, to be honest with you. So I don't really ever see them porting this. I think Sega is the type of company right now with Sonic where they keep seeing into the future. They don't really want to keep revisiting porting older games. They'd rather just reiterate on older games in a new way. So I just don't see Sonic Lost World ever getting ported, and because of that, I could see this going up, especially because it is definitely considered the better of the two main Sonic games that are on the Wii U. Some people really love Lost World. I wasn't super into it. But I can see this kind of getting into the $50, $60 range, because to me this is a Wii U exclusive despite having a Switch or a 3DS version. So because of that, I think you're going to see it go up a little bit. Anyway, guys, I'm going to have a full list. I meant to mention this at the beginning of the video, but I will have a full list of all of the exclusives that are on the Wii U in the description below. So if you need a reference point, you can check the description. Other than that, I hope you found this video useful in some way. Hopefully it gives you some things to think about when it comes to getting into or getting out of Wii U collecting. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.